And Tara, you can start whenever you're ready.
Sure. Welcome everyone to our August chapter meeting. Boy, this summer has flown by. But we're very excited to have a special guest with us this evening. And so we're going to be hearing from the Assembly member, and then there's going to be time for questions and answers from all of you. So we look forward to hearing more. And I think Andy's going to start us off with the equity statement.
Yep. So I'll start us off with the equity and land acknowledgement statement. So Climate Reality Los Angeles, as an institution composed of individuals with nuanced and distinct backgrounds, acknowledges our presence on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Kizh, Tongva, Tatavian, and Gabrielino peoples, the original and ongoing caretakers and stewards of the land. We further acknowledge that in their place, alternative, oppressive, social, economic, and governance systems were instituted. These systems employed slavery, servitude, and hierarchy to destructively establish different classes and deprive the right and humanity of certain peoples, primarily marginalized and oppressing communities of color. Even following the abolition of the most egregious institutions, equality has not yet been established. Privileged classes and peoples remain. It is the outsized responsibility of these groups to utilize that privilege to not only dismantle the existing oppression, but actualize a more perfect union, which equal rights and access of all people are guaranteed. Ultimately, all members of the chapter, regardless of background, stand committed to establishing a culture of repair and betterment that will translate into a genuinely free, fair, and sustainable Los Angeles, free of climate injustice and overall injustice. I'm now taking the opportunity to introduce Assemblymember Laura Friedman. She currently represents the 43rd District. She is running for the newly created 44th District. She serves on a number of leadership committees, including the Water Committee and several others related to environment and sustainability. I don't want to delay this any longer, so please, Assemblymember Friedman, address the group, introduce yourself, and by all means, just let us know what you have to say. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And we know you have a hard out at 6:05, so we'll try to utilize that time wisely. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to spend a little time with you this evening. I really appreciate being here, and I very much appreciate the work that all of you do. You know, climate is one of the most important driving reasons why I'm in the Assembly. It's something that I see my legislation and a lot of our policies very much through a climate lens and a sustainability lens. And I couldn't do the work that I do without the activists, you know, quite honestly. You are the only counterpoint out there to industry and polluting industry, which, you know, often makes our work a lot more difficult. And if it wasn't for all of you out there pushing in the other direction, it would be impossible to get anything done. So thank you so much for everything that you do. So I thought that what I would do is talk to you a little bit about some of the legislation that you're going to be seeing over the next few days. We are at the very end of our legislative session. We have 3 more days to go, and then that'll be it for this year. This is the end of a 2-year session. So some of the bills that are in front of us are the efforts of a couple of years, sometimes even longer, of work. And also you will see, if you're paying close attention, on Monday, you'll see being introduced what we're calling our climate package, which is some bills that came from the governor kind of late in the game, as well as some key bills from the Senate and key bills from the Assembly, all in the climate space. The governor has very ambitious goals with regard to climate and is, you know, trying very hard to make those real in the legislature. I've spent the last few days as part of the negotiating team for the Assembly, kind of negotiating these bills with the Senate and the administration. So I think that there's a lot of good things to like in this package. And some of these bills are going to be very difficult. So I would say the last thing you asked is how you can help. A few of these bills are going to struggle in both houses, even with the governor's help. So take a look at them, and any last minute lobbying or help that you all feel inclined to do, and other advocacy groups, that would be great. And I'm sure some of these bills are already on your radar. So I'll start out with water, which is something that I have done a lot of work in since my time in the legislature. And even before that, as when I was a Glendale council member, I was Glendale's representative to the Metropolitan Water District. Because I know how important water is to my constituents. And as a policymaker, I wanted to be involved in it, but I also wanted to understand the subject better so that I could communicate to my residents about why we are where we are when it comes to water. Now, I think you could spend your entire career in the water world. It's such a complicated system in California, especially with the myriad of laws and agencies and regulations that we function under. But for the first time, the public is acutely aware of water resources. Besides knowing that we're in a drought, upcoming water restrictions and having been through this a few times is definitely making people care. And I'll tell you, I've been campaigning for my new office. And it's one of the top questions that we get when we go into living rooms is about water. People want to know if there's enough water. They are angry that they're having to save water sometimes. They're frustrated. They feel that maybe it should be agriculture should be doing a bigger share. They sometimes feel that we shouldn't be building anything, that if we stop building, that's going to, solve the problem. Some people are very down with the program and have replaced their lawns with drought tolerant plants, and others resent that they might have to do that. So there's really a myriad of opinions out there. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about what's happening right now in the legislature. So one of the key bills is SB 1157 by Bob Hertzberg. This is the continuation of an effort that I had started in 2016, along with Mr. Hertzberg, which will increase water efficiency by updating indoor residential water standards by adopting them formally. These are standards that have been developed for the past few years by the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Control Board. And it seems like a no-brainer, like we're in a drought, shouldn't we all have some guidance as to how much we should all be using? And more importantly, shouldn't water agencies have a budget that they should have to live with regardless of where they are in the state? One of the big inequities has always been that in Southern California, where we're further away from some of the larger sources of water, we're very water thrifty. And even though we've grown by several million people, we actually use less water per capita than we did in the 1970s, because we have put in a lot of water efficiency measures. You have low flow toilets and low flow shower heads, and we give you money. Met gives everybody $150 to buy a new toilet. And there's all sorts of things we do in Southern California that have made us use less and less water. But there are still parts of the state where they haven't fully metered everybody individually, where people just, in Sacramento a few years ago, I was renting an apartment, and the people across the street from me during the day would just turn their hose on and let their kids play with it all day long, because clearly they didn't have a water meter. So the idea behind this original bill was to have everybody have the same standards for indoor water use and outdoor water use. This would codify it. You think it would be easy, but believe it or not, there are still water agencies that feel a fundamental threat to being told that they have to sell less water in a drought, because that's how they pay for everything. So that's one of the important bills. AB 2201 by Assemblymember Bennett would prohibit local agencies from approving permits for new or altered wells in a basin that's subject to SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, unless they meet certain conditions. And this is clearly to prevent agencies from overdrawing these basins by adding new wells without having very strict parameters around them. AB 2108 by Robert Rivas requires at least one member on the State Water Control Board and each of the regional water control boards to have specialized experience in environmental justice or tribal communities. I think that's something that you all could certainly appreciate. I'm hearing your acknowledgement in the beginning. It's also been a difficult, it's not been the easiest bill, but I think it's fine now. I think it'll be fine. SB 522 passed in 2021. Also worked on codifying my old bill, AB 1668, to have better preparedness so that communities had to have approved drought contingency plans. By law, until our bill, they actually didn't have to have approved drought plans. So this should help them be more prepared and more resilient. So there will be in this budget $2.8 billion overall in drought resilience and response funding, which is the most we have ever seen. So the state is certainly taking this crisis seriously. And there are infrastructure projects up and down the state to deal with drought resiliency and to diversify water sources. Here in Los Angeles, we have, I think it's called PureX, maybe, Pure Water, which is a reclaimed water, potable reuse facility, pilot facility that's being built here in Los Angeles County. But we certainly need to do a lot more. So there will be funding in the budget for both urban and small community drought relief, for conservation measures for both urban and small water suppliers, and more funding for turf replacement and agricultural drought response. So this is a pretty ambitious plan. There was $8 billion over the past several years, I think the past 3 years, to really modernize our water infrastructure and management systems in the state. And so this almost $2 billion should go a long way to helping with that. And in addition, it's my understanding that the US government through the US Senate is also included $4 billion in their latest Inflation Reduction Act for Western states drought action. And that should also be something that would help. And I believe that the bulk of that money is going towards the Colorado River, given that it is having a historic shortfall. And that's where a lot of our water comes from. And not just us, but some of the other Western states also draw heavily off of the Colorado. So this money is, part of it is to also pay farmers to fallow their fields, which is unfortunate because we need food, but something that we, need to do at least temporarily. And we're going to continue, to work, even though we're going to be out of session. I know that the work will continue with our federal partners and our local partners on water issues. One thing I wanted to mention is that I chair the Transportation Committee now and do a lot of work with regard to climate and transportation. But before that, I chaired the Natural Resources Committee, which works with the Water Committee on a lot of the drought issues. So just to move quickly to transportation, and then I'll move to questions. The reason that I moved over to the Transportation Committee is that transportation is still around 40% of the state's greenhouse gas emissions. And yet it's also often very siloed, and people don't really think of transportation as being something that we have to think about in climate policy. There's a lot of focus on electric vehicles, and that is really important, but it's not the only piece, because there are a lot of things about our transportation system in California that are just not sustainable all around. Even with electric vehicles, which, by the way, last week CARB codified Gavin Newsom's really ambitious plan to phase out the sale of internal combustion single passenger vehicles by 2035. So if it all goes according to plan, you won't be able to sell a new car in California that's not at least a hybrid. But it's still going to take a long time to get the gas cars off the road. They're not going to turn over that fast. And even if they were all electric, there's a lot of environmental and other types of impacts from over-reliance on single passenger cars. For one thing, the roads themselves are huge emitters of greenhouse gases. They take up space that could otherwise be natural space and habitat for animals. The cars also are intensive to make. Even lithium has its own environmental toll. And we are clogged with congestion, which has all kinds of health impacts. It has impacts in terms of people not wanting to build housing, because as soon as anybody proposes housing and anywhere in Los Angeles, everyone says no, because all the cars and all the parking and all the traffic. So it pushes residents, particularly lower income residents, further and further away from where they're working, which has all kinds of equity impacts, health impacts, climate impacts, certainly. So I tried to think about transportation in de-siloing it and connecting it to topics like housing, like public health, like equity, like open space. So that means not just thinking about transportation, but also thinking about land use and how we could use land smarter to create more density, more walkable, bikeable communities, to put more of our funding into active transportation infrastructure, in making sure that as we continue developing, that our new general plans are creating walkable, bikeable communities and not creating more sprawl, but preserving our open space. And those are really hard conversations for people. And they can be very hard conversations for people who have always considered themselves environmentalists. And that can be uncomfortable, but we have to open our minds and think that to really be an environmentalist doesn't just mean composting, but it also means being willing sometimes to allow your neighborhoods to change and evolve, to change the way that you live. And it doesn't have to mean that you suffer more. It can actually be building a better, more pleasant environment too, and pleasant neighborhood if we do it correctly. So those are the things that I work on. And I'll just mention a couple of the things that I am working on. I have a bill, which is, I had two bills, AB 2438 and 2237, that look exactly at this. The second bill, 2237, was about how cities plan for sustainable communities. Now that bill was held in the Senate Transportation Committee, and we're going to hold a couple of hearings and try to reintroduce it next year, because it's hard to try to tell cities that they're not developing correctly. But we know they're not, because I had a bill a few years ago that actually had us evaluate how well cities are developing for and planning for sustainability. And it showed that less than 4% of our communities are meeting current law, 14-year-old law that says that they're supposed to be developing in a way that is more sustainable. The other bill, 2438, is still alive. And what this bill does is it says that when we fund large transportation projects at the state level, we should take emissions. We should be looking at the amount of emissions those projects create, which means that projects like highway widenings, we should be really thinking about these projects. Are these really the right way to be spending money? Or would that money be better spent on mass transit or and active transportation and things that are, truly sustainable and equitable for the population? So I hope that you'll all take a look at 2438. We certainly could use activists and help on it because even though we've peeled off most of the major opposition, there's still some agencies that just fundamentally don't want to be told, they want to keep doing things the way they've been doing it for 50, 60 years. They don't want to change. They may say they want to change, but when you say, okay, well, how about we shift funding into the projects that we know reduce emissions instead of increase it? And then they get very nervous about that idea. So I will stop there and pivot to questions. But again, I really appreciate you having me here and your focus and your work, and look forward to having a dialogue with you.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I really appreciate it. So since you started with, one of the topics you started with was transportation, I'm going to ask really quickly, and I know it's a tough question, but just a quick yes or no, could you say whether or not you think California will be ready, again, if everything goes through with the CARB ruling, that we'll have the EV infrastructure in place that we need to have a majority of electric vehicles and use electric transportation as our primary mode?
Great question. So we have almost $2 billion in this budget going towards ZEV infrastructure. So, just because you put the money there doesn't mean it's all going to magically appear overnight. So there's certainly a lot that has to happen. In some cases you have to upgrade substations. You certainly have to figure out the best way to do charging for people who either can't charge at home because their homes are too old, or they live in multifamily, buildings, and do they want to charge there? And is it safe for them to charge that way? So there's a lot of questions that are going to have to be answered about how we do this in a way that really works for everybody. But I hope so. I think the answer is I'm hopeful. I do think that there are a lot of market forces that are helping us. The state is not doing this on their own. There's a lot of investment, both from private companies that do charging and from car companies themselves. I say one thing, the car companies, they love selling shiny new toys. And coming out with this new line of electric vehicles, and sort of us giving money as we are for people to trade in their old cars for new ZEV cars is a huge motivator for the market as well to be ready for that.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer. Since I did mention that I'm passionate about water, and as is the chapter, could you identify, or in your expert opinion, explain ways that outside of conservation that activists as well as just residents could go above and beyond to really push for sustainable water infrastructure and really mitigate the drought crisis and achieve some form of water independence?
I think, explaining to people or finding the low-hanging fruit is that we still don't have as much efficiency as we could. We still use a lot of water in places that people don't really notice it. And I'll give you an example. In my own home, I have a house from the 1950s. We have to run our water for a good 5 minutes before we get hot water. And that's very common in older homes, and it's very, very wasteful for water. So in pushing your local agency or your local community or municipality to offer incentives for people to put in flash water heaters, to upgrade those old systems is a way to help, because when that water is running, it doesn't help me. It's not like I'm taking a shorter shower or anything. So these are the kind of things where I think that it's really hard right now to tell people that they have to use less water, because people feel that they're not using a lot of water. But saying you can do exactly what you want to do, but we could give you tools to save even more water without it being a hardship for you, and we're going to help you do it financially, is a way to help with a lot of that low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of people out there still who have a lot of very inefficient irrigation in their home, and that's where most of the water is used. And it's not because they don't want to or they don't care. It's just that they don't know. They don't understand that the way that their sprinklers work is wasting a lot of water, and they're paying for it. So we can help people with better education. We can send people out to audit people's irrigation systems. We can, and I think the agencies are doing a pretty good job, and I see more and more native landscapes. Mm-hmm. I think being careful that we don't degreen Los Angeles is very important, because that will, contribute to the heat island effect. So we also have to educate people that we really don't want them putting artificial turf, covering their whole front yard with concrete or rocks, that there's a real benefit to having live plant material, even if it's just to cool your own home. so that your air conditioning doesn't have to run as much. So there's still education that needs to be done. And then on the larger level, I think for activists that have networks, we're going to have to start changing water laws in California. And that's going to take a huge groundswell of support, because that's not going to be an easy thing to do.
Okay, no, great. Thank you for all of that advice. I hope it's a quick question. Do you think there should be a greater focus on agriculture? Because again, 40% of water goes towards agriculture. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, since I know you have a lot.
I think there's a lot. I think the first thing is to understand the economic reasons why farmers are planting the crops that they're planting. You know, when the economics are that some of the permanent crops, which you really can't fallow very easily, like almonds, they're growing them because they're so much more valuable than other types of food crops. And, you know, almonds are nice, but they're not sustenance. And we really need to make sure that we're growing crops in California that feed us, you know, that feed our people, so that we don't have to import food. You know, if there's one thing that COVID should teach us, it's that we don't want to rely on a foreign and anything that's essential from coming from overseas or out of our country. So I think it's really important that we grow food in California, especially given that we have better pesticide regulations than they do in, you know, Mexico and other places where our food typically comes from. It's more sustainable. You know, we pay people better. So we're going to have to change some of our water laws probably to, you know, encourage that more. There are farmers that are putting a lot of, you know, efficiency measures into their crops. So that does happen. And there are places where it's appropriate even to grow things like rice because of the hydrology in certain northern parts of the state. You know, the fact that those rice fields can function, you know, when they're not actually, even when they're growing, but they function as habitat for migrating birds. I mean, there are places where that works. But we also need to make the economics for food work more than for things like almonds. Okay. And some of that does have to do with the water rights, and that there are still, you know, agricultural owners that have, you know, basically unlimited water rights.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. So I'll now conclude my questions. I mean, I could ask questions all day, but I do want you to know that one of the areas or two of the areas we're focused on that I didn't ask questions about are going to be sustainable building as well as sustainable agriculture. So you did touch a little bit on agriculture, but I just want those key areas to be at your forefront. But in general, with regard to activism, what actions, strategies, approaches do you recommend that climate activists and individuals in general take to enact effective environmental and sustainable policies and legislation, raise the profile of climate change and sustainability as an issue, and further that transition that you talked about towards a more sustainable economy and society? I know it's a big question, but that's why I'm leaving it for my last one.
I'm sorry, can you explain the question a little more?
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, basically, what can we do what are the most effective strategies that we can employ as individuals and as a chapter to make sure that there's meaningful policy towards sustainability, towards environmentalism, toward fighting climate change? All the things that we're passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think every group needs to figure out what they're going to focus on. Like there are groups that focus just on sort of very local activism on certain issues, like picking an issue and writing postcards to their local electeds. And that's really effective. And that can be really important. There are groups that focus only on changes at the municipal level. So, you know, trying to get sustainability built into their own cities' policies. And then there are groups that focus on legislation in Sacramento. And I guess I would say that you can't really do all of it, right? That there's only, you know, you really can't be Sacramento focused and focused on, you know, your own city as well. So I think that, you know, really figuring out what you want to focus on and how you're most effective is very important just strategically, because no one can do everything. And there are groups that do all those different things. So when you care about, let's say, an issue that's in Sacramento, you know, there's a lot of groups that are out there. And I see more and more these different groups trying to align themselves and team up. And that's really great. You know, it's great when you have Indivisible working with Enviro Voters, working with Sierra Club. If everyone's kind of off doing their own thing, it's a lot less effective. So I would say that. And then there's a lot of groups that are doing really good work at the local level. You know, there's groups that have gotten styrofoam banned in their city, or gotten new gas hookups, which is one of my favorite topics, banned in their, you know, for new buildings in their city. And that's very, very effective, because like when I go to do building efficiency, as I did a few years ago at the state level, when I can say, hey, listen, there's already like 20 municipalities that got there first, and it's not going to be such a big change, then I get my colleagues up there saying, oh, I didn't realize that my cities had already done this and it doesn't really affect them. So it becomes a much easier hurdle to do some of these measures statewide when you already have localities proving concept and who get there first. And then I would say be open to things like I'm doing a bill about parking reform that says that within a half a mile of transit, you can't require any limit of parking. And sometimes it's really hard to get the environmental community on a measure like that, because people will be like, no, but what if I can't park? And, but to stop and think that maybe there's a connection between things like parking and parking supply and people's desire to drive everywhere. And, if you focus on areas that already have really good mass transit, you can start to create the kind of sustainable communities that we all should want. So I think sometimes being willing to think outside the box and realize like, yeah, maybe things will be harder for me. Like maybe it'll be harder for me to get to that Trader Joe's, but maybe I should push, instead of not wanting to do that, maybe I should push my city to run more buses, or to run buses free for people that are elderly and students, and run more of them so that it's more convenient. So think of the ways that we can kind of get what we want and allow for that change and push for that change that enables the sustainability that we all want to see in the future. So I think it's that vision of what do we want Los Angeles to look like in 10 and 20 years? And then what's the best way to get there? And everyone's role in that is going to be a little different.
Thank you. So I see in the chat, Dennis is asking, is AB 2438 currently up for a vote in the state Senate? He just wanted clarification on that one.
Yeah, that should come up for a vote probably tomorrow on the Senate floor. Bob Hertzberg's going to be the floor jockey, and then it'll come back to the Assembly on concurrence, which means to concur in the amendments that were taken in the Senate. And then it'll go to the governor's desk. So we need help with it in the Senate, and then we'll need help with it back in the Assembly again, and then the governor, to get the governor to sign it.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. And then Charles, I know you had a question. Are you still, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thanks. First of all, Laura, thank you so much for the work you've already done and the work you continue to do. I really appreciate your passion. You're a little bit north of my district, so I wish I could vote for you, but I'd love to see all the other assembly board people with your kind of passion and knowledge on this issue. I'm going to ask to recruit you into a certain amount of phraseology that we always refer to drought tolerant native as one phrase instead of just saying drought tolerant. We have a biodiversity crisis that's happening right now where we've lost in Los Angeles County 90% of our butterflies and our bees and our local songbirds, almost exclusively because of habitat loss, mostly in areas where we filled the city with non-native plants. Yeah. And one of the problems we have with winning these lawn replacement programs is if we're only focusing on the metric of water and then somebody comes in and replaces it, we're getting the message out not to put in plastic grass. We're getting the message not to put gravel, but putting in all the non-native plants from Australia and China is not a lot better because we still end up with sterile soil that does not help soil microbes, and soil becomes hard packed, and you don't get the water retention that actually can recharge the groundwater. So there's a lot of reasons beyond just the biodiversity element that we really need these programs to focus on and require native landscaping. And it extends into the transportation projects too, for the landscaping in that are connected to all the roads and all the rail and everything that we do, that are always part of that project, and a huge capital improvement every time a new rail line goes in. And we're still fighting a very difficult fight against inertia of people who want to continue to put in ginkgo biloba trees and palm trees and everything that provides nothing but just islands of sterility. So I'm gonna ask that we always include drought tolerant native as a phrase, and make sure that we understand that biodiversity is essential to water crisis management and climate crisis management as well.
Yep, I agree.
Looks like Lucy has her hand up.
Hi, thank you so much for coming, Ms. Friedman. And I would, we've gotten past, one of the committees of the LA chapter has gotten past, the Climate Curricula Committee got past a resolution for climate education across PK through 12, all subjects. That passed in February. We're now going into the implementation stage. There's and that's a wonderful way to to change the future. So one thing that I would like to say is, along what we're talking about, water, the largest landowner in Los Angeles is the LAUSD. If they would stop the pavement and put in a drought, what do you call it, drought tolerant native water, what's your phrase?
Yeah, drought tolerant native. Go and just.
Drought tolerant native plants, then the whole city would be, be a polka dot of native plants that would be a haven for many species. And that's a wonderful vision. But we really need help with this because like you say, the powers that be that have been in power for a long time, they want to keep doing what they want to do. They even called their, the facilities division even called their plan Pavement Plus. And their idea was every time they repave, they're going to take greening funds and use it to repave stuff. And then, but 30% less than there was pavement before. So that's their idea.
Yeah, I think Luz Rivas did a bill a few years ago, my colleague just north of me, about greening schools. I believe, I could be wrong, but definitely a huge issue and huge heat island issue and heat issue in those schools too. And not surprisingly, the schools that are in the most disadvantaged neighborhoods tend to have the most hardscape, least maintenance, type of facilities.
They're so hot. Kids, there's LAUSD has an asphalt burn policy.
Yeah.
Because kids fall down on pavement that clocks in at 150 degrees and they're going to get burned.
Yep.
One thing we're doing is is that our bill is part of the UTLA's, what they're doing to their plan that they're negotiating on. So we'd like for you to take a look at that if you have any, any connection to that and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's
send it over. We'll definitely, I'm happy to take a look and maybe write a letter.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Lucy. Does anyone else have any questions? Assemblymember, I know your time is precious and you have another engagement. So does anyone have any last minute questions? Or Assemblymember, would you like to conclude with any further words of wisdom, insight? We appreciate your time and for speaking with us. Thank you for
look, it's great to be with a group that, is sophisticated in, in all things climate and sustainability. It's fun to kind of geek out with you guys and talk about policy. I know that we're all, we're fighting the same fight. So I, again, really appreciate everything that you're doing. And definitely, I love the point about the natives. My husband's a landscape designer. So this is, we spend more time at Theodore Payne than, than anywhere. So I totally agree with you. And just look forward to continuing to work with all of you. So thanks again for inviting me tonight.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to a fruitful partnership, working with you and just furthering sustainability and fighting climate change in California, in the nation, and abroad. So
thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Bye.
That was great.
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
didn't even need to ask
if just 20 more of our assembly members had that level of knowledge about stuff, it would make a massive impact.
Completely, yeah.
She is whip smart, isn't she?
Yeah.
Well, it's great that she sees the big picture, of where we need to go.
She's been my assembly member for a long time, and those people who are on with us, Sarojini Lal is her manager, and Sarojini is a trained climate leader, went to Los Angeles in 2018, and we know Blake Dellinger as well.
Did you say that she is running for a new assembly?
She is. So since California was redistricted, because again, it has to be in a decadal fashion. Sorry, I don't have a better way to say that. Every 10 years. So they actually combined her former district into what's now the 44th district. I don't know all the details. Diana, you could probably, or Andrew could provide better insight. I think they merged her former district and Assemblymember Nazarene's, or Nazarian. But
Part of it.
That sounds familiar, Andy, but I couldn't swear to it.
Okay, so something like that
Glendale out to
happened.
Thousand Oaks.
Say that
So
again?
it's up north. It's like I said, it's like Glendale out to Thousand Oaks. So it's up north in
Yeah.
the city relative.
But that being said, her new district encompasses parts of the valley. Diana, thank you for joining us. Our chapter, oddly enough, the LA chapter includes parts of the valley, but the valley has their own chapter, which we're very grateful to them for. And we collaborate all the time. So we bring guest speakers from throughout Los Angeles to both. Oh, and Matt said she's in Burbank, so.
Because Gabriel is our assembly member in the middle of the valley. It's Gabriel, Jesse Gabriel.
Oh, he's great too.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have some very
Yes.
good assembly members that are true to Charles's point and others, that while we can't endorse candidates, they are passionate, they are knowledgeable about the environment, about sustainability. I choose, and again, Charles, you brought up a good point before we go into committee updates. Words are important. I still really like the phrase sustainability because I think it's one of those terms and concepts that sort of de-silos, to use the assembly members phrase, because sustainability really should factor into everything. It's not just about the environment. It is about people. It is about communities. It is even about business. You can't have a sustainable business unless it actually is generating a profit. So the question is, how do you do it by being profitable, by helping people, and by utilizing resources diligently and not degrading them? So again, that's why I'm still a big fan of sustainability. And the thing, to everyone's point about being leery or cautious of overusing terms, is making sure that it's not used to greenwash things. And that's the big thing in business, is making sure that it's not greenwashing, that it truly is about sustainability and preserving things. But Tara, I have talked enough. So let's now go into the committee updates. Tara, did you have a particular order that you wanted, or would you like to make announcements and then go to the individual committees?
No, I think now is a great time for any of you committee chairs to talk a little bit about what's going on in your committee. And I know we have a lot of requests for help. There's a lot going on. So I don't know if Matt wants to start, or Andrew, or who wants to jump in, or Lucy.
Yeah, Matt, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So I think I know everyone here. I chair the Speaker Training and Programs Committee. Since the beginning of last year, we've had an ongoing program with LAUSD where we've been sending our climate reality presenters into various classrooms across the district. We fielded over 170 requests from teachers during that time. We have not given 170 presentations. They haven't all necessarily panned out, but we've done a lot. And I wish I had the exact number for you, but it's a lot. Andrew's, I mean, lots of people here have participated in that. So anyway, new school year. So we are really looking for to bolster our ranks of presenters who are willing to go out there. So I'm going to put just a quick little thing into the chat. I've set up a little web page, laclimatereality.org/presenter news, where you can sign up. And if you're getting my emails, and then you don't need to sign up, I know who you are. But if you haven't given a presentation to the LAUSD schools, and if you're interested in doing that, please visit it, please sign up. Would love to have you in the ranks. And also we're looking at starting up another speaker training boot camp soon, or something like that. I just would love to take some time to hear from chapter members about the type of training or the type of conversations that would be helpful to you. Whether you are an experienced presenter or are new at it. So I hope you'll check that out as well on the same page and fill out that survey. And we'll be blasting this out to the full membership soon enough. But please spread the word amongst people that you know. And yeah, that's what's going on with our presentations.
That's great. And you know, we don't have very many people online this evening, but hopefully this is being recorded and some people do watch the recording. And so hopefully we reach more people, and hopefully people sign up to help out, Matt.
Andrew, would you like to give an update about all the legislative work that you've been doing, that the chapter's been doing?
Sure. So I'm glad to see everybody. It's really great to participate in these. I'm Andrew Ellis, and I'm with the Legislative Committee for LA Chapter. And just to summarize, we have been participating at the federal level with the Inflation Reduction Act. We've been participating at the state level with the California senators and assembly members supporting legislation in concert with the San Fernando Valley teams. We convene every fourth Saturday at 9 a.m. On the virtual meeting, so please join us there. The other thing I'd like to say is Jeff Drongowski and I are coordinating the next Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator presentations on September 10th. That's Saturday morning, coming up in a couple of 3 or 4 weeks, about a month. And so if you are a climate leader who would like to participate, you don't have to be a presenter. We need people in support roles. We need people to moderate breakout rooms, and you would be partnered with a person, so you won't be asked to do it alone. We have a fairly good team, but we can always use new members. So if you want to participate with the Clean Tech Incubator presentations, please let Jeff Drongowski or me know about this. And I'm going to put my contact information and the dates and some Zoom links in the chat for everybody. Again, September 10th is the presentation date, and we'd love to have you all join us. Thank you so much, Andy and Tara, for allowing me to talk.
Thank you, Andrew. Go ahead.
Awesome. And Andrew, I also just wanted to, before Lucy goes, just make a plug for the legislative committee too, because it's really been active. It's been a great partnership with the San Fernando Valley chapter. I really just love to see how engaged people are calling senators and assembly members. So, for those who may be watching this, if they're interested in, helping support these bills that our assembly members and senators are working so hard on, like, definitely get in touch with Andrew. It's a great way to, do something that really is going to make an impact. So just had to plug that effort.
Thank you, Tara.
All right, Lucy.
Hi, as everyone might probably here knows, that we got on February 8th, we got passed the Climate Curricula Committee of this body, got passed a sweeping piece of a resolution, a piece of legislation, a resolution calling for PK through 12, all subjects climate education. And the idea is for teachers to begin to infuse it into their topics, because, we know as a climate activist, the science has not, the science has moved some people, but it's going to be, history and culture that's going to move people more. And we see that all over our country right now, right? So to weigh in on all of that and to have kids thinking about that and practice in thinking about climate issues through, all the different lenses and all the different disciplines, that's our goal. So what's happening next is we're having the first meeting of the first convening of the Climate Literacy Task Force is on September 1st, which is Thursday at 4 p.m. And if somebody is interested, please put there to come to it, and then please put your email in the chat. And then on Tuesday, it's a budget meeting for the board of education, and we're going to be talking at 4 in general public comment about how what we really need to implement this is not one stipended person per school. That's gonna fail. What we need is a person who's looking at it every day, like what's called a
champion.
Yeah, a champion who's actually, but they're calling it a champion too, and they're giving them $1,200 a year to lead their entire faculty in changing what they're teaching about climate, which is, impossible. So we would like it to see it to be more. We're presenting a budget that would be something like $30 million, including 12 new buses for extra field trips, and a great increase in field trips for kids, because we're going to green the schools, but this year we could get lots and lots of kids out to lots of different places if they fund it. So anybody who would like to help us speak and support that idea on Tuesday, please let me know in the chat, because I'll give you some directions. You have to sign up tomorrow at 12. So thank you.
That's awesome, Lucy. And thanks for keeping up the hard work on really implementing that resolution. You know, it's one thing to pass a resolution, it's amazing, but if they're not doing it, then that obviously is really where the impact is. So great work there.
And then Tara, I also see that Lisa's on the line. Lisa, did you have any updates for the agricultural committee?
I think she might have just
Did she
dropped
drop off?
Andy like a
Oh.
second ago.
Oh, my.
Yeah, but a couple
Oh.
things Andy and I also were going to mention is that we are planning another in-person event. We're open to your ideas, but we're thinking it'll be either a hike or an activity of some kind in the fall. So open to any ideas you have, but be looking out for that. It'd be great to see one another in person, have some fun together. We're also considering maybe changing our chapter meeting dates. You know, it's kind of dwindling, and we've definitely heard feedback that Sunday nights are hard for some people. Like, will we be able to find the perfect night for everyone? Of course not. But I think we probably want to do a survey to gauge, is there a better night of the week for people? So would appreciate your help in responding to that so we can get some input on that. Charles, you had your hand up?
Yeah, germane to that, I'm on the board of directors at Westwood Greenway, which is a habitat restoration project in West LA between Overland and Westwood, and where we've taken right along the Metro E line, we've resurfaced a historic spring, and we've made a habitat restoration thing with all native plants. And it's ADA accessible on our main path. So, I mean, it would be a perfect thing to do an outdoor event. I do like an hour tour spiel of it that I could do if you wanted to do it, or you could just have people walk up and down and look at the plants and we could talk about it. So if you want a place that's free, that's easily accessible, that's in LA to do something for an event, let me know and we'll get it on the calendar. I'm the one who does the tours for Sustainability Advocates. And
Ooh, sounds pretty good.
so, I mean, that would dovetail nicely. And while I've got you, I would really kind of like to see, I know you have a lot of committees and initiatives. Are you receptive to maybe letting me start a biodiversity oriented committee? I'm in the process right now of taking an initiative to all 99 of LA City's neighborhood councils, and I've gone to 8 of them so far. And it's a process where you go to the subcommittees, then you go to the main general assembly, and it takes like 2 months just to do one neighborhood council, with an initiative that we're also doing in Burbank and in Pasadena and everywhere in LA County to try to get municipal actors to only use native landscaping in their public projects. And so far we've passed everywhere we've gone. And so there is good stakeholder support with this, but we need to get an overwhelming amount of stakeholder groups signed on to something like this to then take it to city council, to, you know, Pasadena mayor's office, these kind of things. And I would love to be able to say that I'm also on behalf of Climate Realities Biodiversity Committee, just to give our group here a little more plug and also a little more weight to the effort that we're doing. And so I'm curious if you're receptive to that, or what your thoughts are on that. And while I have everybody in here, if you are in the city of LA, if you have contacts at your local neighborhood council, please contact me, because I would love to use that contact to facilitate the next group of neighborhood councils that I go and visit. Usually I try to start at a sustainability or green committee if they have one, or land use even. But please contact me, and I'll put my email in the chat thing. And one last thing while I'm hogging up time here. I'm doing a presentation. I'm doing a speech on this issue at the Congress of Neighborhood Councils that's happening in LA at, well, it used to be at City Hall, but this year it's virtual because of COVID. And if you're interested in that, there's a bunch of stuff that overlaps issues that we care about in this organization. So there's my email, and there is the link to Neighborhood Council of Congress. So my thing is about, again, native plants and biodiversity and habitat restoration, but there's lots of other cool stuff too. And I'm involved in a lot of different city organizations and city committees and things that I've appointed to. So I would love to work with you if that's something that would be helpful and dovetail with the work that you're doing. So, and come hear my speech if you get a chance. It's a free thing. You sign up, and even if you don't want to hear mine, there's lots of other stuff that is of interest to the work that we're doing.
Thank you,
That
Charles.
is awesome.
I would say, Tara, again, feel free to chime in. Our members are always welcome to start new committees, The one thing I would recommend is possibly look at the list of our current committees, because we did have too many committees at one point and we pared them down. So seeing if there's another committee that may dovetail or work nicely. We used to have zero waste and plastics reduction, for example, as a combined committee. So maybe if there's another one that would fit, that would be my recommendation first before starting a new committee. But that
Yeah.
being said, if that isn't a viable option, then we can always create a new committee.
I did look at the list, and I'm not sure what's the difference between chapter initiative committees and chapter initiatives, but I guess the initiatives don't, I mean, and Andrew could answer that, obviously, because he's part of it, but, and what he's doing, but, and he's the reason I'm here, by the way. He was my, my gateway drug into Climate Reality Project.
Most
And
people are on that drug.
Nice.
so, there's a wetlands thing, though I'm not particularly focused on wetlands and just uniquely. I'm interested in all of habitat stuff. So I don't know if there's one that overlaps this as well, but I will
I'm
follow
actually
whatever lead you
inclined
want me
to
follow.
repurpose that one
I
personally.
am too. Let me put my 2 cents in here, Andy.
Yeah.
The biodiversity fits perfectly with the wetlands. I mean, it expands the mission, the goals into much larger California and North America. It has Audubon, flyway, bird implications. So biodiversity and wetlands are perfect. And I think that, Charles, you could be, it's sort of, I won't say inactive or dormant, but it would be useful to have some injection of some interested blood. And if you wanted to step up and lead it, I'm sure that you could talk to Andy and Molly Basler and Tara to see what they say. But I think wetlands is where you want to go, Charles.
Okay, I'll follow up with you guys, Tara and
I'm sending you an email about my neighborhood council too.
you rock. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm sorry. One last thing, Charles's thing. I believe, and I'm going to get the name wrong, the neighborhood council has a sustainability alliance. Have you spoken to them?
Yeah, I was one of the people who helped start it. Yeah, years ago. So
Oh, okay,
yeah,
so
very
you still
familiar.
have to go to all the individual ones.
Yeah, very well. I mean, the problem is NCSA does really good stuff, and we are working with them on this issue, but we don't have all 99 of our member neighborhood councils in it, and so there tend to be, you know, it's kind of, we have red counties and purple counties, you know,
Okay.
or neighborhood councils, and so there are ones that are really into what we're doing, and there are ones that it's not a priority for them. So that's why we decided to go neighborhood council by neighborhood council, and you know, it's a long, you know, trog through all of it, but it'll be what it'll be.
Well, now I understand more. Really quickly before, sorry, Lucy and
Yeah,
Andrew,
Lucy.
really quickly, I want to give Diana the opportunity to publicize the San Fernando Valley chapter event, because I know she's been waiting patiently. So Diana, the floor is yours, and then we'll go back to those that have their hands raised. So
Thank you, Andy and Tara, and you know, kudos for bringing such a great speaker to the meeting tonight. She's really amazing, smart as a whip. It was really great to hear her speak. So thank you. And I just wanted to tell you guys, we have as our guest for our September meeting, which is September the 13th, climate author Sarah Jaquette Ray, who wrote the book, A Field Guide to Climate Reality. What am I saying? A field guide to climate anxiety, how to stay cool in a warming planet. And this book is really so interesting. It's so supportive. And I mean, you can use it beyond climate. The way she breaks things down and is just ways of thinking about the whole climate situation that really is supportive. So if that's something you'd be interested in, the registration link is the short link bit.ly/SFVCR. Just copy, paste that into a URL and our registration page should come up. So thanks again for the time to share the event.
Thank you, Diana, and I hope our
Yeah.
members will participate as well. And then, sorry, Andrew, you had your hand raised, and then Lucy, you had your hand raised. But thank you, Diana, for that announcement.
Let me just briefly say a few words about the Agricultural Committee, because we're working in concert with the legislative committees. We recently, in the two committees, Agriculture and Food and Agriculture, and the Legislative Committee, got together with an organization called Kiss the Ground and executed a memorandum of understanding that provides, it's a program called Regenerate America to push the 2023 Farm Bill reauthorization through the Congress next year. So that's an upcoming initiative for both the Legislative Committee and the Food and Agriculture Committee. So if Jennifer was here, she would talk about it. So I'll mention it tonight. That was executed a couple of weeks ago. Andy and Tara know all about it, but I just want to bring everybody up to date of what these two committees were up to with the Farm Bill in 2023. It's going to be a big push.
Awesome. Lucy?
Yeah, just for Charles, I'm really excited about trying to work with your group and have schools work with your group. What a wonderful project. We can get information about what these different neighborhood councils are and so on out on Schoology, what's called Schoology. We have a Schoology group devoted to climate education. So we could get what you're doing, and that would be a wonderful local project for students at different levels to do. So
Lucy, we have two retired U.S. What's the U.S. U.S. school district? LAUSD. We have two retired school teachers on our board who give at different age groups focused youth-oriented school tours of Westwood Greenway. And because it's rail adjacent, it's right at the Westwood Rancho Park stop. So any school that's anywhere within walking distance to a rail stop can get there pretty easily. And I'm sure they would love an opportunity to coordinate any of that with you as a teaching element, because when you get the kids out and they see the butterflies and the bees and the the songbirds that they just don't see elsewhere because we don't have the habitat, that's a real important thing that goes with the message. And I think it's and maybe that would be something that would work really nicely with you.
And I'd also love to talk to you about how we can talk to neighborhood councils as well.
Sure.
About
absolutely.
what I didn't bring up was Beyond Recovery. We wanted this committee to vote on Beyond Recovery, allowing, like supporting the UTLA's bargaining position on clean, green neighborhood schools. In fact, on all of their points, the Beyond Recovery platform. So I don't know how you do that kind of an endorsement, how we do that kind of endorsement, but I would like to mention that too.
I think
know
Lucy,
it's
for that,
6:27.
if you could just send the link to their website to the leadership team, you can just reply all to the email I just sent.
Mhm.
And then we take a vote by email of the leadership. So make sure no one has any concerns.
Yep.
All right,
Tara nailed it
perfect.
spot
Thank
on.
you.
That's our process, unless we previously discussed it. Otherwise, then again, approval is already granted if it lines up with an initiative we've already approved of, or if it's expanding on that. Tara, any other announcements? We covered a lot.
No, this was a great meeting. And we were just saying, too bad more people didn't join, but we'll try to see if maybe there's a better day of the week and see if we can get our participation up. But hopefully people will be able to watch this. So Andy, are you going to ask Jonathan to send this out?
Yes, I'm going to finish the recording and then I will make sure that it's ready and we will get it posted to our YouTube channel. The other thing that we'll work on doing, Matt, I know you're busy, but I may ask for your expertise and or Jonathan's. I think we also want to have an archive on the website just so that it's there, or at least the link. Again, I can try and do it, but God only knows if I can figure it out on my own, but we'll make sure that people have access to the video. I do want to thank everyone that is here on the call for joining us. For those of you that watch this as a video, we thank you and we hope that you learned a lot. We also thank Assemblymember Friedman. She was a great speaker and we learned a lot, and we appreciate her advocacy and her environmental activism.
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Great to see everyone.
Good to see you all.